Second language acquisition. This is the first of a two-part video series about second language acquisition theories. Let's begin by looking at behaviorism and contrastive analysis hypothesis. Behaviorism was influential from the 1950s to the 1970s. As we know from the first language acquisition, the behaviorists believe in habit making, so that when phrases and sentences are repeated enough, they'll become habits that the learner will be able to use. This is true in their opinion for the first language acquisition and second language acquisition. However, in SLA, they think that the habits learned when acquiring the mother tongue will interfere with learning the new target language. So there's a need for significant amounts of drill and practice in the second language. This leads to the Contrastive Analysis Hypothesis, or CAH. In a very simplified explanation, Contrastive Analysis Hypothesis claims that when the first and second language have similarities, then the second language will be easy to learn. But where there's a difference between the first and second languages, there's a lot of differences, then it's going to be difficult to learn the target language. While CAH does seem to be able to explain some language learning issues, it does not hold true in general. For example, we know that regardless of what the primary language is, English learners will acquire certain simple grammatical components in the same order. Also, when ESL/EFL learners make mistakes in their sentences, those mistakes cannot always be traced back to their first language. It does appear that eventually teens and adults are able to recognize similarities and differences after they've learned a fair amount of the target language. So they're able to use their cognitive skills to accept or reject patterns. Therefore, CAH has more significance for intermediate levels and above than for beginners. After behaviorism came Innatism. It began in the 1970s, but remains influential today. Chomsky argues that there is some place in our human brain that contains universal grammar, UG, that just needs to be released or used. The question is whether this can possibly relate to second language acquisition also. Some say yes, it does, but that because of the differences, it requires more direct teaching. Others claim that just sufficient input in the second language will be enough, just like it was in the first language. Krashen came up with 5 hypotheses for applying the Innatist view of SLA. He called it the monitor model. First is his acquisition learning hypothesis. He defined acquisition as something that happens naturally with no conscious attention to language form. Learning, on the other hand, is all about consciously attending to rules and language form. Second is the monitor hypothesis. This monitor is constantly making comparisons between what has been acquired and what has been learned, so that it makes the necessary edits and revisions between the two in order to successfully learn the language. And the monitor basically works in this area called the interlanguage. This may happen automatically in some students, but for most, they will need guidance, plenty of time, and a purpose to present correct language. Third is the natural order hypothesis. This suggests that second language acquisition follows patterns just like first language acquisition did, although not necessarily the exact same way for both. The fourth is the input hypothesis. This is the one I focus on most because I believe it's true to a large extent. The learner acquires the language when receiving a lot of comprehensible input. This is represented by the formula I+1. The I stands for input, and the +1 represents the level being a little bit higher than the current level of the learner. The idea is that I+4 will be much too difficult for the learner, so they'll shut down, while I-1 will be too easy for the learner, so boredom will set in and will also shut down. The fifth of Krashen's hypotheses is the effective filter hypothesis. This is another very useful idea. It says that even if the first 4 hypotheses are true for a particular student, he or she still may not learn language just because they have an emotional barrier. The effective filter could be boredom or anxiety. It also could be a lack of perceived need to learn the language, a lack of motivation, or a negative perception of their own language learning ability. Most of the emotions I've mentioned here can be addressed by a perceptive teacher. Okay, we've covered a lot in this video. We started out talking about behaviorism and the contrastive analysis hypotheses. Then we moved to the Innatists theory and Krashen's application of that theory through his monitor model. The next video will look at some psychological theories.